There's John.
There he is. Just on
No,
time.
it's Chris Gardner. He's more important.
You seem to be missing a chair. I guess you'll have to stand for the meeting.
Okay, it's 6:30. I'm going to call the meeting of the August 26th meeting of the Oxford Board of Zoning Appeals to order. Before we go to approval of the minutes, I'd like a motion to reorder the agenda to swear in.
I'll move.
It's been moved.
Have a second?
Second, swear in Gerald Yearwood. Chris, are you available to swear in our new?
I am, if Mr. Yearwood is prepared to
He is prepared.
go down here and do the ceremony. You got a copy? It's easier if you follow along. I've been known to. Oh, actually, you know, I have your copy. Oh, okay.
That's an extra copy.
Oh, okay.
That's fine.
You raise your right hand, please. I, Gerald Yearwood, solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support,
the Constitution of the United States
I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the state of Ohio,
and the state of Ohio,
and will obey the laws thereof,
and will obey the laws thereof,
and that I will,
and that I will,
in all respects,
in all respects,
uphold and enforce
uphold and enforce
the provisions of the Charter
the provisions of the Charter
and the ordinances of the City of Oxford,
and the ordinance of the City of Oxford,
and will faithfully discharge the duties
and will faithfully discharge the duties
of the Board of Zoning Appeals
of the Board of Zoning Appeals
of the City of
of
Oxford,
the City of Oxford,
upon which I am a member.
upon which I am a member.
I'll sign that, we'll get a copy for you, and we'll take care of that.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, the meeting's been called to order. Mr. Yearwood has been officially sworn in. Could I get the roll call, please, Ben?
Mr. Creech? Here. Mr. Chafin?
Here.
Mr. Wyatt?
Here.
Mr. Yearwood?
Here.
Mr. Russo?
Here. Okay, next item on the agenda is approval of the March 24th, 2026 minutes of the regular meeting.
Mr. Chairman. I have a question I'd like to ask the law director. Chris, in our minutes from the March 24th meeting, we adopted the decision letter that you had drafted in that matter in case 252503.
Okay.
Now, after our decision, I believe there was some litigation or some agreement reached. Was that?
Well, there was no litigation.
No litigation, okay, but there was an agreement reached of some kind.
There was a threat of litigation, a notice, well, I shouldn't say there was no litigation, technically there was. A 2506 appeal was filed.
It was.
Yes, and then that we were able to resolve the situation with counsel's blessing that then settled the litigation before.
Was there a formal agreement, written agreement reached that was signed by the parties?
Yes.
Okay,
City
is
manager.
that agreement a public record at this
Yes.
point? Okay, I just wanted to make sure the record was clear, the public knows that, we
Right.
reached our decision, but it was taken out of our hands, and if they needed to get the details, they could get the copy from you.
Yeah,
Thank-
that was all done in open session.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
With that, I'll move to.
Weeks ago, as a matter of fact,
Months.
months ago.
Okay, just clear the record up. I'll move to approve the minutes.
Okay, you've have the minutes in front of you. You've had a chance to look at them and consider them. There's been a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Any modifications, changes? Okay, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you, Mr. Yearwood. Okay, on to new business. First case is BZA 2026-02-102 South Locust Street. A variance to section 1143.12C2A, front yard setback. Scott Webb is the applicant/agent. Zach, should we swear you in first? Let's do that.
You may.
In fact, let's just do it all at once. Everyone who's gonna testify or speak to the commission, just stand and Mr. Conrad,
Does
Mr.
this
Kennard,
include both cases on the agenda or just the case?
would everybody.
Everybody
Yep.
may testify in either one of
We're
them.
gonna do it all at once, okay?
If you would please raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear to tell the truth or affirm the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay, Zach?
All right, good evening, board members. Welcome, Mr. Yearwood.
Thank you.
First case of the night, again, it's BZA 2026-02. This is at 102 South Locust Street. This is the El Burrito Loco restaurant here in town. And this is a variance request for a front yard setback to construct a 3-season room addition onto the existing restaurant. The applicant for this request, who is with us this evening, is Mr. Scott Webb, who is an architect here in town. The property owner is Uptown Investments LTD, under care of David Westbizer. The current zoning is GB, which is the General Business District. And again, the current use of the property is a restaurant, that being El Burrito Loco. The specific variance being requested is to section 1143.12 C2A, minimum front yard setback. This is the district setback for the General Business District. And again, this is for the purpose of constructing a 3-season room addition to enhance the dining space that's available for the restaurant. And here is a look at an aerial view showing the location of the subject property. So to the north, we have La Rosa's, we have Oxford Spirits, Shandon Steel in the shopping center building here. To the south is the relatively new Oxford Puzzle and Putt, formerly RDI. And here is South Locust Street right here, and you can also see Lynn Avenue off to the west as well. And this is in fairly close proximity to a railroad crossing. This is the CSX Railroad, which runs diagonally to Locust Street. So the rail crossing would be just to the north. And then, of course, to the east across South Locust Street is the car wash and laundromat. And then here is a look at the zoning classifications in the area, showing that it's predominantly general business district. Once you cross the tracks over on this side, it turns into the RO office residential district. Okay, and here is a view from above. This is as of March 2026. So this capture comes from a few months back. So you can see here, there's the dedicated off-street parking area, which is on the property. You can see the restaurant building here, the main entrance being here. And there's presently a patio that exists on the front end of the building, which is facing South Locust Street. And that had received there had been previous variances related to, there had been previous variances for this building to begin with. So all the way back in 2003, the original set of variances that were granted, there was a variance to the front yard setback to reduce from 35 feet to 30 feet. So the front of the building, where the front facade sits, is actually 30 feet back from the front lot line along South Locust Street. The typical requirement in this district is 35. So it's already sitting 5 feet closer to the street by virtue of that previous variance request. Then later on, there was an attempt in 2010, and then later in 2015. I believe the 2015 request actually came from the exact same applicant as the present request, that being Scott Webb Architect. In the records, it was identified as a deck. I think for all intents and purposes, it ended up being more of a patio than what you would call a deck. But essentially, the request was initially denied for the variance vote of 4-1 by the board in 2010. Then there was a reattempt in 2015, and that one was granted by a vote of 3-2 to allow for the deck, what then later became a patio, to come in and be built. So essentially, the request now is to turn what amounts to more or less the exact same footprint where the patio sits, turning that into a building addition, to actually turn it into a 3-season room as opposed to being open to the sky as a patio would normally be. Took a couple site photos on July 23rd. So here is a view looking north. So you can see here's Locust right here. Here's the shared access point that leads into the parking areas that are shared between the La Rosa's building and El Burrito Loca. And then here is a view looking south, more directly at the patio itself. And here is a view looking straight at the patio, fencing that encloses it, and the seating that's outside. Okay, so zeroing in on the exact zoning provisions, again, it's 1143.12C2A. In that section, the following setback standards are provided for properties in the GB district. Minimum setbacks being front yard 35, rear yard 25, and there's actually no side yard requirement unless the property is abutting a residential district. In this case, there's no residential district in sight, so the side yard requirement would indeed be 0. But of course, the only one that's being considered here tonight is the front yard. That's the only one that's problematic. And it's a 16-foot setback that is being proposed. And remember, as I said, the building already sits at 30 feet. So the request essentially is to move from 30 feet to a 16-foot setback for the building. And then here is a look at the site plan. So you can see here, it's noted on here, this is the 30-foot setback. And then the building addition would be plopped down basically right where the patio presently exists, and the setback would be adjusted to 16 feet. And here's a look at the floor plan and elevations. If you read through the staff report, you would have seen there was a comment from the fire chief concern regarding the allowable occupancy, and I don't think that's something the board needs to concern itself with as far as the number of tables and chairs. If this variance request is granted by the board, ultimately a building permit would be required and the occupancy can be sorted out at the time of permit review. And here's a look at a rendering showing what the addition would look like once finished. Okay. One aspect of this proposal I thought it would be important to address. We have a comprehensive plan that was adopted in January 2023, and the comprehensive plan and the policies therein are much, much newer than what we're seeing presently for the general business district. We're actually currently engaged in a zoning reform effort to better align the zoning code with the comprehensive plan. We just haven't quite gotten to the point where we have a full draft code that we can bring forward for adoption, so we're kind of caught in this strange in-between phase where we've got a clear set of directives and policy ideas that were officially adopted in the comprehensive plan, but those are not yet reflected in the standards of the zoning code. So I think the comprehensive plan should definitely be considered as a factor when deciding on this variance, specifically the character type that's identified for this site, as well as the say the South Locust Business Corridor in general. The whole area that's identified in pink there is what's known as the mixed use center character type. And there was a page in your staff report that had a depiction. This is the stylized image for what a mixed use center is supposed to generally kind of look like and feel like when looking at it from a top down perspective. And one thing about this that I want to highlight is, and this was very intentionally done, I have personal knowledge of this because I work very closely with the consultant that put together the comprehensive plan. The buildings here were very intentionally and deliberately brought up to the street, closer to the street. While it is true there isn't an exact figure or number proposed for what these setbacks should be, ultimately that's going to be for the zoning code to make that decision. I think it is clear that the policy intent here is to have a district that is more urban in character versus suburban. And I think the standard that we have in our code today, 35 feet, is far more suburban when you consider the depth of the yard that results from that standard. And this GB district applies not just to South Locust, but applies all the way down College Corner Pike. Everything you see along College Corner Pike is the exact same zoning district. We're going in a different direction on that presently with our code reform effort, where we're actually going to be having 2 different districts treating College Corner Pike differently than we would the South Locust Street area. So just keep that in mind, that the comprehensive plan does recommend a very different development pattern than what we see today along the likes of South Locust or Lynn Avenue. Okay, so with that, we've arrived at the decision criteria. So in accordance with Oxford Zoning Code section 1139.02C1, the burden of proof is upon the applicant to present reliable, probative, and substantial evidence that supports the request for variance. Furthermore, per Oxford Zoning Code section 1139.02C2, the BZA must find that practical difficulties exist that would render strict application of the code inequitable and prevent substantial justice. And the way to determine whether practical difficulties exist is by using this set of decision criteria known as the Duncan standards that appear in our zoning code. So I'll begin with criterion A. We find that this criterion does not support granting the variance because the denial of the variance would not fundamentally jeopardize the continued use of this building and property as a restaurant. With criterion B, whether the variance is substantial, we find B does not support. And I think the main reason why we landed this way on criterion B is mathematically it seems pretty substantial. When you compare 35 feet to 16 feet, the degree of variation is roughly 46% of the overall requirement. So because of the significance mathematically, we believe it's a substantial variance with respect to B. C, we find that this supports the variance. This is whether the essential character of the neighborhood would be substantially altered or whether adjoining properties would suffer a substantial detriment as a result of the variance. So this surrounding area on South Locust, it's defined by commercial businesses, structures that are oriented primarily around the automobile access and convenience. The structure that is immediately to the south, 110 South Locust, which currently houses the Puzzle and Putt. This one is positioned in near perfect adherence to the 35-foot setback. So if you visited the site and you compared it with the building to the south, that one appears to be in compliance. And the shopping center building to the north is similarly situated. Another good example of a compliant setback would have been the Miami University and Community Federal Credit Union, which is at 31 Lynn Avenue, that was built in 2019. Despite this stark difference between the setback that's now proposed for El Burrito Loco and these other existing seemingly compliant structures in the general area, staff does not believe this reduced front setback would be a detriment to those other properties. While contrary to the existing character, staff would argue it would help the corridor, the overall area, transition into one that is more urban in character. Again, that's what the comprehensive plan recommends. So for that reason, we find that C would be supportive. D, whether the variance would adversely affect the delivery of governmental services, we find that it supports. And I've already addressed the fire chief's comment that there's really not a nexus to the case at hand with respect to the occupancy. Another item of note when it comes to governmental services. So in the staff report, you might have noticed the city engineer chose not to offer formal comments, but I do want to mention that I did have a conversation with him about a potential grade separation project between South Locust Street and the CSX Railroad that's nearby. So as I talk about this, I'm actually going to scroll back to the map that shows the rail crossing. Actually, this might be a good image to land on because the rail crossing is right up here. So you see how it kind of lifts up here, the terrain, the topography lifts up. So the idea is that someday, maybe it would be like High Street in Hamilton where the road goes under the railroad tracks, so there isn't an at-grade crossing. It is a project that is still provided in our 2008 Oxford Thoroughfare Plan, but it is not currently listed in our capital improvement plan. So there's no funding that's currently earmarked. We don't even know how much it would cost. There's no engineering estimates or anything like that. But just taking a very rudimentary look at the existing landscape along South Locust Street, if an improvement project along these lines were to ever come to fruition, the grading impacts probably wouldn't reach out as far as El Burrito Loco, to the point where acquisition and potential demolition or destruction of what this planned addition encompasses probably would not be necessary. Going back to the criteria, we are on letter E, which is whether the property owner purchased the property with knowledge of the zoning restriction. The applicant specified in his letter that the owner had limited zoning knowledge when first purchasing the property, and according to auditor records, the transfer occurred in 2009. Additionally, the business had not contemplated the addition of an outdoor patio when first opening. So criterion E doesn't really lend any additional support toward granting the variance. Criterion F is whether the owner's predicament feasibly can be obviated through some method other than a variance. The predicament at hand is to increase the functionality of an existing outdoor dining space by providing additional shelter and enclosure, therefore improving potential seating capacity at times when inclement weather is being experienced. And there would not be any other way to resolve this predicament absent a variance approval. So for that reason, we find that F is supportive. G also lends support toward granting the variance. This is whether the spirit and intent behind the zoning requirement would be observed and substantial justice done by granting the variance. While the request at hand may be somewhat contradictory to the initial spirit, shall we say, of the 35-foot front yard setback provision when first imposed, would have been first imposed in 2003 with the code rewrite that occurred then. Staff believes permitting an additional variance now would constitute substantial justice given supportive evidence that has already been attributed to the other criteria. And then one additional criterion that is not up on the screen is H, which is any other relevant factor. So I think I would circle back here to the comprehensive plan, the future land use character type designation for this property, that being mixed use center, defined as a place that supports a mix of commercial, retail, hospitality, civic uses, embodying strong design and placemaking principles. In this area, walkability is promoted. Narrower setbacks from the street are implicit in the conceptual image, like I showed you. Additionally, comments from the economic development specialist, Seth Krokenbaker, I think those need to be considered. He does provide substantial evidence of support in other areas of the comprehensive plan, calling out objective L2A3, which voices support for expanded outdoor dining. Conclusion, so staff is not going to offer an overarching recommendation on this case or any other future case. It's the job of staff to essentially provide the facts, provide analysis of the criteria, but ultimately it's up to the board to make a decision on the matter. And I am happy to take any questions. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Zach. Any questions of Zach? Yep. Good.
So Zach, you mentioned the occupancy issue, and it'll be covered by the building permit. Do you know what the increased occupancy will be?
I do not.
Okay. So how do you evaluate that in terms of issuing a building permit? The fire chief is very concerned about that. Would you have concerns about that?
I think I could speak to that generally. I'm not a registered architect, but as I understand it, if I understand it correctly, the way that it works, generally speaking, with occupancy is the building code determines how occupancy is to be calculated. The architect would prepare, basically, they would be taking an initial stab at calculating how that occupancy is to be determined, and then it's ultimately up to the building plans examiner and the building official to review those calculations, and they can either agree or disagree with those. But ultimately, if it's accepted, then the occupancy would appear on the certificate of occupancy that's issued at the conclusion of the process. So it really, that whole process doesn't entail any sort of involvement or weighing in by the zoning administrator.
Right.
that
I
being
get that.
outside.
I was just curious because,
There's a notation, I can't remember if it was yours or whether it was Mr. Webb's, that the applicant would comply with whatever the occupancy restriction ultimately will be levied. Was that your
Yeah.
notation, or was that?
That was, I don't recall
Maybe it was
myself
Mr.
making
Webb.
that
Maybe
notation.
we'll get to
but,
Mr. Webb.
Yes, effectively, the building code, the
Right.
provisions of the building code would apply to anyone
Yeah.
as they're going through the process.
Let me ask a related question. What about parking and the increased occupancy and parking spaces?
There's, the use is remaining the same, so there, I believe there was a variance on parking already. And that might have been an oversight on my part. I don't, that is a good question. Because if you think about it, this patio already has seating.
Right,
So in theory, if the capacity of the restaurant is not increasing, then there shouldn't be an increase in demand that would necessitate more off-street parking. But that's a very good question, very good question.
well, it's the one question that hit me as I thought about, even though it's gonna be on the same footprint, there are a number of tables and seating capacity on that patio/deck now. But I'm sure that'll get
yeah, to
resolved
follow up on
too.
the parking, there's no on-street parking on Locust there.
There's
So
not, no.
All the, it's all
It's
off-street.
all off-street in this
And
area.
it looks like the pictures, and I've been there a lot. By the way, I love El Burrito Loco. But it's usually pretty full. They've only got 15 spaces on El Burrito Loco, so that people always have to park on that other parking lot where the liquor store is. Do you know whether or not they have an agreement that they
I
can
do
use
not.
those spaces?
I do not know
Okay, would that be
that.
something you
I'll have
consider
knowledge of
in the
that.
building permit? That would be a concern you'd have? Or would it be?
I think the staff review has already been completed with respect to this addition. The only zoning deficiency that was identified was the front yard setback concern. So hypothetically, if the board chooses to approve this variance, there wouldn't be any additional parking requirements that would be imposed at the time of permit review. And even if there were, I don't think there would be any room whatsoever on this lot to squeeze in additional
Right.
What are you
parking.
gonna do?
Right. Okay, any other questions? Thanks, Zach. Mr. Webb?
Need a refresher. It's been a while since I've been here. It seems like it's been a while since you guys have been here as well.
I think he's waiting for his presentation.
It's up now.
There we go.
All right. Well, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of Board of Zoning Appeals. As always, staff does a very, very thorough job examining the issues at hand here. I'm not going to go back over them again. Zach illustrates them well, and it has brought up some really good points. So we'll just kind of jump right into what we're talking about here. And if I did that right, which I did not. Okay. So the long and the short of this is, yes, there is a setback requirement, and we're looking for a variance, and this is all very mathematical and very formal, but really all we're trying to do is cover the patio. With regard to your question about occupancy, occupancy is really simple in the building code. It has to be based on something that can't change, which is square footage. So you don't go back to the building department when you buy new tables. If you show small tables, big tables, it doesn't really matter. It's not ambiguous. It is 15 square feet per person in a seating area. That's what the fire department will call it. That's what I'll call it on the drawings. That's what it is. So there's really no question. It's not ambiguous at all. It is simply a matter of square footage. So that being said, with regard to the parking and things like that, we feel it is similar. It is the same amount of square footage that can hold the same number of tables that we're intending to cover. The long and the short of this is just, it's as simple as we've tried to make it. This patio that was granted their variance back in, what did Zach say that was? 2010, or, denied in 10, but 10 years ago, in the 10 years that this patio has been in place, it's been successful for them, as I'm sure most everyone in the room has been to this restaurant. We all enjoy it, and we'd like to see them succeed. The patio has been successful, but we all know that summers in Oxford are for the residents, and when the students come back, he loses his dining room. So as our population increases, the weather prohibits the use of this space that he's able to use all summer. And so it's simply a matter of trying to get this covered. We're calling it a 3-season room in that it's not going to be air conditioned. And the intention is to have kind of the roll-up doors on there as we're showing here. So it still feels like an outdoor space for as much of the year as it possibly can. And then we'll get a few more months in the spring and in the fall by closing those doors down and kind of tempering it just a little bit in there. So that's the long and the short of what we're asking for. With regard to the decision criteria, well, I kind of wanted to show you the existing site here, and I appreciate Zach's comments on the comprehensive plan and potentially where the new zoning code is going. I think the strongest point here is that we have an uptown district and we have a GB district. The GB district currently takes care of Locust Street, Kroger, all of that area. It also takes care of College Corner Pike and Walmart, and also these kind of transitional areas which are a little more dense and a little more urban, more pedestrian oriented perhaps. So as Zach pointed out, we have gone over the years now to get sidewalks throughout this area down here. As our comprehensive plan is looking at this being a more urban, less suburban, less Walmart, more Stewart Square, kind of an idea, the things being a little more compact, a little more accessible to the street, and a little more pedestrian focused is sort of what we're going for here. So we believe that this restaurant is already creating some kind of life on the street and some activity there that projects. I was not involved in the design of any of these buildings, but the other thing that's kind of unusual about this development, not just this one, but as we looked at the one where Puzzle and Putt is they're almost done like PUDs at this point. They're really not done like street-facing lots. We have El Burrito's Locos entrances facing north. It's not even facing the street. The same with Puzzle and Putt. The same with La Rosa's, the liquor store. It's a bit of a jumble as it is there now. I think that it's wise for our code to look at that differently than we would look at College Corner Pike and think about these setbacks as being absolute and making sure our buildings stay off the street. I think that in this case, providing life on the street and more pedestrian access is probably to the benefit of the neighborhood here. Lastly, with the decision criteria, the practical difficulty here is kind of twofold. One is that we were granted a variance to have this additional dining space. The parking was considered at that time in 2015, not considered to be an issue, and we were able to proceed. We'd simply like to go forward with this. As you saw from the site plans and from everything else, this thing is completely landlocked. There's no place to go except in this direction. It's a space that we're currently using. So the practical difficulty is simply that there's no way to expand this restaurant in this location and try to pick up and move, which would be quite a burden for a business, obviously. So the practical difficulty is clear. The practical difficulty is we need a variance in order to expand this business to take a use that this board has already granted in the past and let us use it 3 months or 3 seasons a year instead of just 1 season for the year. So whether or not the variance is substantial, I agree that it is mathematically substantial. I don't think this is a mathematical question that we're really talking about here. I think it is not substantial in that it is not changing the use, it's not changing the occupancy, it's not changing the demand for parking. It's just simply allowing this business to use something that they are already using more times during the year. So I don't consider that substantial, though it might be mathematically substantial. With regard to the essential character, I agree with Zach and the rest of the decision standards kind of overall. My client obviously knows we've been through this variance process both with David Westbrother, the building owner, and also with Burrito Loco over the last few years. So we don't really feel like that one is really a factor. But be happy to answer any questions that you have.
I have a question.
Okay.
It's more curiosity. When I walked the property, I was trying to envision the notion that it would be on the same footprint. And I noticed that the sign is right there. And in your rendition, I think it's on page 23. Does the sign stay where it is?
It does.
Yeah.
It stays behind the sign. Yeah,
Right.
and the patio is behind the sign currently. You know, we've kind of landscaped it pretty densely in between the sign and the patio rails there and stuff. But no, it fits right behind there still. So yeah, that would be a concern perhaps if we're not asking to move the sign closer to the road. Nothing really changes.
And that would have been an impact if it had been coming out, entering, cars coming either way on South Locust. But it's staying where it is, so. Any other questions for Mr. Webb? Thank you.
If
Thank
you have
you.
any questions, Ricardo's here, a lot of you know him, manager, he can answer any operational questions if you have, or anything like that. He's just here to hopefully get your support as well.
I have no questions.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, any other comments or concerns on the board? All right, then we'll close this part of the hearing, and as per our policies, we will convene for deliberation in the anteroom. We will be back. Chris?
I'm coming, there's a code apparently if it's locked. But Zach has the key. Not literally.
That's good. 52. Check mark at the end.
Okay, we're completed deliberations, we're in the open session now, and we'll hear any motions for the disposition of this case.
I'll move to approve the variance.
The motion has been moved. Do I have a second?
second.
And it has been seconded. Any questions, concerns, modifications, comments? Hearing none, please take the roll.
Mr. Creech? Aye. Mr. Chafin?
Aye.
Mr. Yearwood?
Aye.
Mr. Wyatt?
Aye.
Mr. Russo?
Yes. Okay, so the motion has been approved, the variance has been approved. Staff will prepare a final written recommendation and finding. Thank you, Mr. Webb, and we'll move to the next case.
Thank you, everyone.
Sure. Okay, we are on to case number 2, BZA 2026-03, 5081 Red Cloud Court, variance to section 1141.01A4 to permit a play equipment in the front yard of Northern Equities Group, care of Brian Hughes, applicant and agent, and this is up on University
University Park Boulevard.
Park Boulevard. The office of the apartment is Red Cloud.
Yes, the office is 5081 Red Cloud, and the main entrance to the complex is off of University Park Boulevard.
Correct. Zach?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Theme of the night is front yards, I suppose. So, second case of the evening is a front yard setback request. This is BZA 2026-03. The applicant is Northern Equities Group, care of Brian Hughes, who is with us this evening. Recently acquired the property, so this is the new property owner interest. Sol U Oxford LLC, also care of Brian Hughes. And current zoning classification, this is the R4 multifamily residential district. Current use of the property, multifamily apartments. Previously, it was called the Prime at Oxford. It has since been renamed with the ownership change. It's being rebranded, renamed as Talawanda Grove. And the exact proposal, this is a variance to 1141.01A4 to permit the installation of play equipment in a front yard area. There is a look at the location of the subject property. It's two distinct parcels. So you see this white line that runs down the middle here. There's parcel number 1, parcel number 2, but it's effectively all one complex. Here's a look at the zoning classifications in the area. There is a portion over here that's highlighted with yellow. This is unincorporated Oxford Township that has retained township zoning. There's the A1 agricultural district and the B2 commercial that are applied to properties that are in the township there. So effectively, that's like a hole in the middle of the corporate jurisdiction there where the city of Oxford has not otherwise annexed the land. But everything else on this map is within the city limits. So that includes, of course, the subject property, which is R4. It includes the land to the south, the Kettering Health Oxford location, which is in the office industrial district, shown in purple there. And there's the Shell gas station that is a little further south, that's zoned general business. And then here is a view from above, and you can get a little bit of a view of the Talawanda School District bus garage that was built here off of University Park Boulevard. And a better view of Kettering Health as well. So the main entrance is right across from the entrance to Kettering Health. So the area of the site that is in question here with the variance request, the arrow here on this slide is identifying where that is located. And here is a zoomed in look at the enclosure. So the previous owner effectively had installed a dog park for use by the residents of the complex. So it's a fenced-in area with mulch in the middle. And here are some photos that were taken on July 23rd. So that is looking north. This is a little closer. Okay, so the relevant zoning provisions here, this is out of section 1141.01, which deals with accessory regulations. And this subsection is called permitted accessory uses and structures in residential districts. Of course, the R4 multifamily district is a residential district, so this section does apply. There is a subsection within this that provides for exemptions. These are specific items that are called out that they are otherwise permitted and don't actually require a permit. So any one of these items listed in 1 through 8 can go on a lot, and provided it's in the side or the rear, then it's in compliance. So other examples on that list: sandboxes, gardens, clotheslines, small inflatable pools, trellises, wood piles, fire pits. But you'll see that number 1 on there includes swings or play sets. So that effectively is the provision that is in need of a variance to allow for these 2 pieces of play equipment that are proposed to go within the front yard area of the site. Although I can't really get into the head of the person who may have written these provisions, they are written in such a way that it is universal across all residential districts, but when I read this section, I think it's appropriately written for, say, a single-family residential context, a subdivision, where you wouldn't want to necessarily see play equipment, play sets, swings, things of that nature in a front yard setting. You'd want to see them in the rear yard. So this standard makes perfect sense in those situations. In this situation, we're dealing with a multifamily complex that's quite spacious in terms of setbacks, lots of green space readily available. So in this situation, I think it probably makes a lot more sense to have play equipment in a front yard as opposed to dealing with a much smaller single-family lot type of context. As far as what is actually defined as a front yard, that comes from 1159.251A, a space extending the full width of the lot between any building and the front lot line measured perpendicular to the building at the closest point to the front lot line. So that's translated here onto this image. So everywhere in blue is considered the front yard, and you can see that that dog park area falls firmly within the front yard. Okay, so with the decision criteria, we find that A does not support because denial of this variance is not going to in any way jeopardize the vested right of this property as a multifamily complex. But with respect to the rest of the criteria there, B through G, and I think I might have had some commentary on H, yes, pointing out comments from the economic development specialist in favor of the proposal. If anyone has any questions about any of the staff findings on any of the criteria, I'm happy to entertain questions. But for the sake of time, I won't necessarily go through all of the details on that. But I do need to make clear, in accordance with Oxford Zoning Code Section 1139.02C1, burden of proof is upon the applicant to present reliable, probative, and substantial evidence that supports the request for variances, and the BZA must find that practical difficulties exist that would render strict application of the code inequitable and prevent substantial justice. And staff does not have a recommendation overall on this matter. As I said during the last hearing, staff is no longer making broad sweeping recommendations. We're simply analyzing the facts and circumstances of every case and offering our analysis of the criteria, and ultimately leaving it up to the board to make the decision. Happy to entertain any questions. This concludes my report.
By my observation, right now, there's a fenced-in area with mulch. Is it a dog park? Is it a functioning? Okay. And within that fenced-in area, there's a picnic table, 2 benches, and then outside the fence, immediately to the east, I guess, there's another picnic table. And all those are exempt?
Yes, there's nothing in the zoning code that prohibited.
So all
we
that's
allow-
already-
We allow front yard fencing.
I rode my bike up there, I looked at it, and I saw all that stuff there.
Yeah, I do recall when a representative of the previous owner had reached out to me, asking, we want to put in a dog park for our residents, what permits do we need? I informed them that they would, of course, need a fence permit. But yeah, otherwise, it's just a use of the green space, and there wasn't anything of a construction nature other than the fence itself that was identified at the time. So I think the use of the space is pretty passive for the moment. But yeah, when we're talking about adding additional features or construction to the area, because the code very plainly says play equipment is not allowed, hence why we're here for the
But
variance.
picnic tables are. But picnic tables are. Okay, I have no other questions. Any other questions from the board? Okay, thank you. Mr. Hughes?
Good evening. Appreciate everybody's time. So what we're hoping to accomplish here is taking existing areas such as what the dog park is and then modifying it to add this play set and one other structure. So they're relatively small. I did bring pictures of what those will look like if you want to see them. I didn't bring it in a slide form. But when I'd spoken to Zach before, he had said that this would require variance because technically it was a front yard setting. So
Why don't you just pass them around? We'll look at them real quick here.
I think they're attached, right?
Well, it was a facsimile of the,
yeah, included in the package.
right.
So, and the intent with the dog park area is to actually divide that, so we'll come back in for a fence permit. It would be to leave the dog park in a portion of it, and then change, which we would clean up, remulch, And then for the two pieces of equipment, they would be professionally installed. Obviously, all the safety requirements, rubber mulch, those types of things would be included as well.
So the dogs won't have access to these?
We figured the parents would probably not appreciate that. But they'll be fenced off accordingly, and we'll add another picnic table or two, some other benches, so it becomes kind of a nice amenity. There are a lot of families that do live in this community.
Will it remain mulched, or do you have another plan?
So the portion where the dog park will still remain regular mulch, but in accordance with safety standards for the playground equipment, that will become rubber mulch.
Rubber mulch,
Which is
yeah.
pretty standard.
Yeah.
There's different ways to do it, but that's one of
Right.
the ways to provide safety for children.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Any questions for Mr. Hughes from the board? Any comments, concerns? Zach? Okay. Well, that ends the evidentiary part of the hearing, and we'll convene to the ante room and deliberate. Okay, we have completed our deliberations. We are back in open session and ready for a determination of the applicant's request for a variance. I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the variance.
Been moved by Mr. Yearwood. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been seconded by Mr. Creech. Any other concerns, questions, modifications, discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll, Ben.
Mr. Chafin?
Aye.
Mr. Creech?
Aye.
Mr. Wyatt?
Yes.
Mr. Yearwood?
Aye.
Mr. Russo?
Yes. Motion has passed. Your variance has been approved. You'll receive a written report from staff soon, and it'll be read into the record. This time, there's no other business before the commission. You're welcome. I'll entertain a motion for,
I move to adjourn.
a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Been seconded. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. We are adjourned. We're off the air.
FYI, we've got two cases next month. Oh, I'll be around, and I'll go reconvene. On the 22nd.
You know anybody with that?
Third, if you, I don't think.
Bull Run Drive.
Okay.
Where are you?
Personal time capsule.
Are you on the corner of,
We're at a cul-de-sac.
oh, I know the cul-de-sac.